All right, guys, welcome back to the Knafs Fast channel. We're going to start a few minutes early here. I had already started the stream up, so I'm not able to talk to my guest, but I hope he's hearing me. I see a smile, so hopefully. We will get there in just a moment, guys. Welcome back. This is week in review for the week ending 11/15/24. You guys know we usually do all kinds of crazy stuff on week in review and go into everything that's happened this week. But this week we got a special treat for you guys. We have a special guest that's going to be joining us momentarily. If you've not been paying attention, then you're going to have a treat here momentarily because we have a really cool guest. So without further ado, let's see if I can do this justice, ladies and gentlemen. After I don't know, 2.5 to 3 years of asking the most famous man in the knife business to come on my, look, he's shaking his head, to come on my stream. And by the way, just to be fair, he put his family first, which is what I do, which is what we all should do. And I totally appreciate that. But ladies and gentlemen, you know him from way back as Ben Banters and now as Ben from Knafs and been from everything. And let's just get him on here and start this off. Hope you're doing good, man.
Dude, thanks for having me on, Casey. I appreciate it.
Dude, I am excited, beyond excited to have you on here. So appreciate you doing that. I know I bugged you a little bit there, but
hey, somebody in the comments, Goondock says most famous. That was the same thing that same emoji I wanted to use. I definitely don't feel like the most famous of anything.
Here's the thing. I had to say something, man. Come on.
I appreciate it.
But no, I mean, everybody knows you, man. And the thing is, this is why I wanted to have you on, because I feel like, look, you're just like the rest of us. Although you said something to me that stuck with me 2 Blade shows ago.
Oh boy.
And you probably don't even remember this, but you said something that completely stuck with me. And I said, we were looking at the where is it? Yep. At the Lander at the time. We were talking about the original Lander. And I said, hey, Ben, you ever thought of doing, this is a really cool, simple little knife. You ever thought of doing a hollow grind on this? And here's what you said to me. And this is why I think you're such a cool dude. This stuck with me. But you said, I'm a dad. I'm cutting open a box or popping a zip tie. I don't need a hollow grind. And I was like, wow. And you know, it all goes back to, for me, the banter and you talking about, you know, something that's the perfect size for your finger out here to get into those kind of cuts that you're used to. So I think it's super cool that you sort of circled what you like and you said that this is what works for me and it's simple and it's good. And you've like doubled, tripled down on that and then had Space Kittens sell it for you. So I don't know. It's just, I think it's cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Casey. Yeah. You know, it's really interesting because I'm in this period now. We literally have just spent the last 2.5, no, it's been about a month and a half now since Blade West, redesigning a knife that looked too much like a previous knife I've already designed. And
so you were copying yourself, which
I was copying myself. So it's been really, really interesting because I know what I like and I tend to design around it. So as we were designing this, I'll spill the beans. We're working on a little Lander. So basically
even smaller?
Even smaller, yeah.
Well, very cool. I mean, not for me, but for some people.
Yeah, for sure. I don't have a like sub $30 knife in any of the knives I've designed. And so like I work with like the young men at church. I work with the Boy Scouts a little bit, and like they'll come into the shop and they'll have like $25 in their pocket, and I'm like, here's a $45 knife, and they're like, no, I can't afford that. So we've been working on the Little Lander, and it came out looking pretty much like a baby banter with a couple changes. Which is a problem because Civivi is a company and Knafs is a company, and we work together on a lot of things.
Right. You don't want to overlap too much, right?
Yeah, you don't want to overlap too much. Anyway, so all of that said, I'm learning to design things that I don't necessarily prefer myself, but they are interesting to other people. So that's a challenge, man. It's I guess that's
totally agree. And you know, I like that the community, you just mentioned something that your people, your community have pushed you to somewhere. You know, for example, I think everything should be an 8-inch knife. And that's where I started, you know, and everybody, matter of fact, we got our buddy Tim B in the chat already dropping the links, and Tim likes small knives. Tim is absolutely your small knife guy. And Tim pushed me and was like, you know, hey, you need to do some smaller stuff. So I did my micro burst, and now I've done the micro jet, which is actually, you know, I like a small knife as long as I can still get 4 fingers on it, you know. Yeah. And that's you know, 7 inches. I do have a design that's actually 6.5 coming up, which is outside my comfort zone, but I think it's really cool that you're trying to meet both the budget need and the size need, and you know, where people are telling you to go, even though it might not be exactly what you would do.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. It's almost like playing bingo too. You know, I've done every knife I've designed so far is like a thumb stud, 2.9 inches, and that's all well and good. It's fine, but I'm to this point where like people are like, Ben, why don't you try a thumb hole? Why don't you try a flipper? Like, you know, and so it's sort of like I've designed what I wanted, but like if you're a baker, you have to keep baking. Like people are going to keep consuming your bread. So like even though you've made sourdough a million times, you got to keep making sourdough.
More sourdough, right?
Maybe put some rosemary on it, you know, maybe like switch it up a little bit and play with it. And that's kind of the phase of my career I'm in now, is like, what do I find interesting that maybe isn't what I would personally like and carry?
Well, and here's why you need to do that, okay? So look at this comment. Banter is all you really need.
Yeah.
And then look at this comment. Banter has never appealed to me.
Yeah.
So that's exactly, and there's nothing wrong with that. I get that all the time. I get people saying, I like your style. Your style really doesn't speak to me, you know, and it's fine. So it's exactly what you said. We got to keep baking. I mean, and again, I look at the poster behind you, because that's, I mean, did the posters predate the banter, or am I crazy?
No, the poster was the very first thing I ever created by myself. So this side.
I do that.
The poster was the very first product I created ever under the Knafs brand as my own stuff. So I made it 2018 when I was working at Blade HQ, and at the time it was kind of interesting because I had, at work, we were doing all these promotion items. So we were doing like socks, and we were doing like flight tags. If people have like watched the journey for like 10 years, you'll remember like all this kind of weird swag stuff we were doing, like really fun stuff. But I was basically inadvertently learning sourcing and how to create products. Oh, that's funny. How to create products on the back end. And so like I'm talking these sock manufacturers, and I'm talking to like coin manufacturers and all this stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can make things, because I was doing that as a marketing manager.
Right.
And so I started that kind of opened my mind to like, Ben, you're not just a marketing guy. Like marketing is selling product, but what if you created and sold products? And so I kind of had some frustrations, and the poster was what became of those frustrations. I wanted to pour my energy into something that I owned. Right. And I knew how to source. I knew how to make A and B fit together and create C. And so that's where the poster came from. And
that's very cool. And then of course the mats. I have my mat down here somewhere. I don't know. I can't look for it right now. But it's you know, that, and then obviously it turned into a knife, the banter. So I got this one at Smoky Mountain Knife Works. Like what? I don't even know how long this has been when they first came out. So
yeah, probably. So it came out 2020. So you might have had that for 4 years.
Yeah, it feels about that way. I got it probably 3 months after they came out. It was a little ways after they had been out, but
so that would have been like right as COVID happened, 2020. In fact, the banter announcement it basically will turn 5 in January. So we've got a new banter coming out, kind of my yearly banter foray. That will be kind of a 5-year anniversary version of the banter. So I'm excited about that. We're calling it the bougie banter. It's
the bougie banter. I like it.
It's got a titanium handle and all sorts of stuff.
Oh man!
And I gotta apologize, Casey. I'm at home today. I went home last night, and then I got home. I was like, "Dang, I literally
don't have any stuff to show.
I didn't bring anything to show, so I'm just going to describe it all."
You're good, man. That's fine.
In fact, the one thing I have here I can't show. It's a brand new prototype we got yesterday, and so I'm sitting here fiddling with something that is not ready for public consumption.
I have that stuff all the time, man. I just ordered some prototypes last night of some new Tempest stuff. So
cool.
It's hot down here. I had to take the hat off. It's I don't know what it is right now. It is hot in this room. So real quick, I didn't even do this. I just jumped right in. But let's say hi to the folks in the chat: Jim Miller and Anasso and Tim B and Drummer. Hello, and Main Roll Man. Big Red. Hello, sir. Good to see you.
Big Red in here.
Yeah, Arizona EDC. And I know there's a lot more in here. So hello to you guys. Thanks for being here. Wouldn't be much of a chat if we didn't have some folks to chat with. Hey, Plenipote, what is going on? So, the banter is exactly kind of what you wanted. Okay. So in other words, very simple. The length of blade you're looking for, which is what'd you say?
2.9 inches. Yeah, I love that 2.9.
That's it. That's perfect. So, like you saw in the chat, some people have always this has always been one of those knives that people either like or hate or somewhere in between. But
it's
for
divisive.
me,
yeah,
I've always said it's very simple and it just works in the hand. I mean, it really, really does. And to be honest, when I bought it, I wasn't sure I would like it. And it kind of, it grew on me and it became one because typically, like I said, I mean, my size knife that I prefer is like I showed you this guy at Blade Show, my Fractus, which is 8-inch knife. And in this case, I even got a finger choil to get up here and choke up. That's, I like a lot of room for my big mitts. So I wasn't sure, this one was going to work, but it just does. I mean, you designed it from a utilitarian perspective, and I think that's exactly what this one is good at. And the same thing goes for the Lander. Yep.
Yeah. And it's, it's been a fun adventure because when I originally designed the banter, I wanted a crossbar lock on it. It was 2019. I think the crossbar came up in 2018. The patent expired from Benchmade. And at the time, yes, Tim, awesome.
There you go.
At the time, we and Civivi was not ready to make crossbar locks. And so we ended up doing a liner lock on the banter. And I was actually thinking about that this morning because I think if we had done a crossbar lock, I might have been satisfied in life. I'd be like, cool, my work is done here, go home, but what I realized is there were new things that I wanted to design and work around. So like in a lot of ways, the Lander, especially the Lander 2 with the crossbar lock, is the result of we and Civivi not making crossbar locks. So it's kind of interesting. Like life is funny, it sort of twists and turns and moves around in weird ways. And so I don't know. I really enjoy that. From Tim B, we had a moon lander and a Mars lander. When we see the rest of the solar system?
We need a Pluto lander. I'm just kidding.
No, that's a great question. So, we experiment with things, and a lot of times the market tells us if it's a good idea or not. So, like we did a Mars lander, and people were not as excited about Mars as they were for the moon. And so you look at it, you're like, okay, all this time and marketing energy to create something that we're only selling, I don't know, 80, 90 units of. It's hard to be like, yes, now let's go on to Venus. You know,
it's tough, man. It's tough. There's things you think, you know, oh yeah, you could do a Saturn lander with rings around it. No, but yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's tough to know what's really gonna, you know, and to be frank, a lot of people already went out and bought a lander. So now you're doing something different, and they're like, wait, do I really want to push, you know, another one? By the way, Big Red says, I promise I haven't decorated any random trash cans lately.
There's an inside joke on that. Big Red. So I was in Salt Lake.
Thank you, JB.
I was in Salt Lake on just a business conference, totally unrelated to knives. And I'm seeing like knife stickers everywhere, like on trash cans and like newspaper things in Salt Lake, downtown Salt Lake. And I was like, oh, this is like a month after Blade West. And like all these miscreant like knife guys are like slapping stickers all over the light poles and stuff. And so I found Big Red's sticker on a trash can and sent a picture to him.
That's awesome. Yeah, he was. I think he told me that story. I think it was him and Stevie, said Stevie out there decorating trash cans. So that's hilarious.
Super fun. I love it.
Yeah, I need to do better about stuff like that. Getting my name out there, like Big Red, right in the middle of Salt Lake City, just putting himself out there. I love it.
I mean, it was gone the next time I passed by that corner, but you know, it's
it was a brief thing, right. You know, I guess before we just keep diving into knife models, I had a question for you. So I know, all right, so did the love of knives predate the knife jobs, or did the knife jobs predate the love of knives? So I know, was it more of a marketing thing and then you got into knives, or the other way around?
It's such a good question, Casey. And I was at Georgia Bushcraft last week.
Oh yeah, I saw your post. Yeah,
with Taylor Martin and the whole Georgia Bushcraft crew and a whole bunch of friends. And I was having just these knife conversations, and somebody asked me something similar, and I said, you know, even now, I'm not a knife guy at like heart. You know, like I don't sit there and like debate the latest Spyderco Paramilitary 2 steel and how it's so great and how I need it for my. That's not me. I like knives from an adventure perspective, right? And I always have. I've got these little knives from like Yellowstone from when I was a little kid, probably 7 or 8. I've got stories of fishing trips where my grandpa bought me a knife. Like that is kind of where my love,
for a lot of us,
like that's where my love of knives comes from, is like the stories around them. Not so much the object itself. Even now, like the knives in my collection are stories that I've collected. I have some that are like research samples, things like that. I don't even count those as part of my actual collection. Those are just things that I own, right? But the knives that I actually keep and care about are stories from friends. You know, I've got a Fox Zero that Jesper Voxnes gave to me. And it's a Jens Anso design. It was when I worked at CRKT. I was at dinner with Jesper. I was like, what knife is in your pocket, Jesper? And he's like, well, it's my friend Jens's knife. And he gave it to me right there at dinner. And that to me is like this really like kind of a special knife that a friend gave to me. And I wasn't great friends with Jens at the time. In fact, just 2 months ago, I was in Denmark, went to Jens's house, ate at his table, saw his shop. Like, there are these stories woven into knives, and I have not found an industry that I love more when it comes to stories, because I kind of left knives for a couple of years as I scaled Knafs on the side. I wasn't working at full time. I worked in corporate America, and like nobody cared about what we were selling on a story level. We were selling like Panasonic bathroom fans and like these Bully Dog truck tuners and stuff, and it was fine. But like nobody invited me to their kitchen table, you know. Nobody invited me to sleep on their couch and meet their family. Not that like that's what business is all about, but like the knife industry is so open and good. And so, sorry, long answer to your question.
No, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, I love the stories and the human side of it. And I haven't seen that or found that in any other industry that I've worked in. And I've kind of cross-sectioned in a lot of different, like, when I was in corporate America, I was doing like beauty and like car parts and different things. And like, there were good people, but like, they weren't going to invite you in for dinner, you know?
Right.
So I love.
I was just gonna say, I think that's an interesting part of what I was gonna say is it looks like you've had a what I would call a wild year. I mean, you went to China, like you said, you've been a little bit everywhere. You went to Georgia Bushcraft, you've done all these things, and I think that's given you some really cool. Again, I love the Knafs at night with the stories you guys are telling. I think that's really cool. So, what of those travels this year? Obviously, sounds like some really cool stuff. So, what stands out for you? I mean, it's got to be really cool to experience that kind of stuff. And I'm sure the China thing was really an interesting experience as well.
It was so fascinating. What stands out from all of them, like you said, I've kind of been all over this year. US, I went to Europe, China. What stands out is the people, like in particular, just like people that are stoked about knives. For instance, there's a guy that works at Kaiser named Neo, and Neo speaks. Cool. You've probably met Neo. Yep. Speaks like perfect English, but we got to road trip with Neo from Yangjiang to Guangzhou. It's a 3-hour car ride. Right. And I'm sitting there with Neo and just like talking about life and talking about like it was really special. But I think one experience that on that car ride really stands out to me. Man, and now I can't remember what song came on. He likes American music, and a Vietnam War ballad came on. One of these popular like CCR or somebody like from that era, kind of this Vietnam protest song came on, and I can't remember. Anyway, the song came on, and I'm like looking around. And I'm like, holy crap! Like China fought against. They were like supporting Vietnamese in
100%
in Vietnam, right? The Viet Cong, and here's this Vietnam War ballad being played on this radio of this Chinese car driving across China, and I'm like, whoa, what a world! What a world!
Right.
How cool is that? That like at this moment in time, I can be having such a different experience from when this song was written and when his ancestors were fighting my ancestors. Like what a cool moment to be having this road trip. Yeah, it was like Fortunate Son or something. It was so cool. And yes, it's about knives. Neo works for Kaiser. I work for Knafs.
Yeah, and that's why you were there to begin with. I mean, fair enough.
But like this very human experience, and Neo probably doesn't even know the history of that song, and that's totally fine. He likes it. I like it. And what a cool experience to have this human, very, very human interaction as we drove across China. I think that people don't understand how cool this knife culture is. I met the guy catering an event in the Netherlands. His name is Jan. And Jan's this great chef that Knives and Tools, they're a dealer out in the Netherlands, contracts to come cook hamburgers and make delicious food. And Jan, like, he pulls a Yipper out of his pocket, and he pulls a Lander out of his pocket, and a baby banter. He's like, I love your knives. And then he hands me a hamburger. And I'm like, where am I?
That is crazy for sure.
And so for me, that has been the biggest part of this year for me is I feel like it's kind of been my breakout year in terms of like going and meeting the people who buy my knives, meeting the people who make my knives, and just having this really clear understanding of like, dang, this is all really interconnected. And it's just this really human experience around knives. Almost like, I hate to call it like a spiritual experience, but like you meet people and you're like, we're brothers because you own my knife and you like me and you like my stuff. Bring it in, like that is 100%. It's been really cool.
That's the way it feels at Blade Show for me. It's very weird to meet somebody for the first time and they walk up and they pull one of my knives out of their pocket and they're like, I love this thing. And I'm like, don't even know who you are, but cool.
Good, bring it in,
Yeah, exactly. That's how it feels. Delta 9, thank you. This is our official channel knife here. This is the dollar store Dolica here. So it's a long story. There's a club. Keith the Knife Freak is our chairman of the club, and you get one of these if you're like cool, I guess. But I didn't know I was cool. But there you go. But Delta, thank you so much for the membership chat, and JB for your super chat earlier. But I was going to say, so I would agree with you. So I got to go. Kershaw had their 50th anniversary this year, and they flew me out to Portland, and I went to their 50th anniversary event. And there were some of the guys from Blade HQ, David C. Anderson from Knife Center. There was I always blank on his name. And now I'm forgetting the name of his store, so that works even better. Anyway, a bunch of industry people were there, and obviously the folks from Kershaw. And that was my favorite part of the whole thing, was just we sat down over pizza and just chatted about, life, and then a little bit of knives, and it was a blast. So it's exactly, and that's the way it feels like at Blade Show. Thank you, Rusty. There's Rusty, been a member for 35 months. Thank you, Rusty, for your awesome support. And so, yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, I was having conversations with David C. Anderson about his designs, and he was asking about my designs, and, and we were just talking. So, that is super cool. And I can't even imagine what it's like, culturally across, you work with what, QSP and Kaiser and Civivi, and I work with Kubi. Most of my Kubi and Concept are who I've worked with. And so I haven't, unfortunately, Kubi doesn't come to any Blade shows. So it's like I only communicate with them, online basically. So I haven't really gotten to have that kind of relationship. But obviously the Concept people are always at Blade show. I've met with Joyce and the whole crew. But it's awesome to see, even in a couldn't be more different culture than we are, how they're still, like you said, Neo, Kaiser. I've dealt with them. Obviously, I got two hats, the Knives Fast side and the Tempest side, and I've dealt with them on the Knives Fast side, and they just seem like down to earth, very reasonably nice people, and it's interesting to see how culturally it goes across the aisles like that.
And it's, somebody said in the comment section, like, knives are apolitical, it's, and I really,
that's a good way to put it.
I feel like that. And there's a big segment of the industry, and maybe it's not, maybe it's loud, maybe it's not as big as I think it is, I don't know, but there are people who are very much beating the American made drum, and I have a lot of respect for that. In fact, we're in the process at Knafs right now of working on making some of our own stuff. We're looking at mills and machinery and different things. I love Way of Knife, by the way. They're great. I need to go out and visit them one day in Michigan. Anyway, so
and then Tim was saying, if you come to Michigan, he's got $2 bills. So I mean, we gotta, if you end up in Michigan, anyway, go ahead.
No, so anyway, there's a lot of.
I was about to bring up the USA versus China thing in a moment, but I want to hear this first. So.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I've been trying to. So even before I went to China this year, I've been researching it like crazy, and like I've been learning so much about where did modern China come from. Okay, and I've probably read somewhere in the neighborhood of like 12 to 1,500 pages in the past 8-9 months. On China, just trying to understand these thick books and history and different things. And anyway, so what I've realized is, like, we should be making things in the US, but I think there's a difference between like USA made only and like we're going to diversify and make things all over. There's this globalization that has happened. This is the world we live in, right? Like, we're looking at machinery that, like, even if you're making knives in the US, where did your machine come from? Where did your belts come from? All of these different pieces and parts, we're so globally interconnected. In fact, I know of knife companies that are like very much USA made knife companies that make their pocket clips in Taiwan or China. Now, here's the deal. I'm not trying to rat anybody out or dog on them.
No.
But
that's not what we're doing.
No, not at all. But I do think you have to kind of balance the marketing side of USA made, and the reality of it is, I think to be USA made, it has to be a certain percentage or whatever. You can have foreign components in your knives, and that's part of this game that we're all playing. 100%. Right? And it's funny because we came out with the Lulu that is made by White River in Michigan last year. We've made everything in the US as much as we could, down to like the boxes and the stickers. But the more I've thought about that, and we kind of marketed it like that, down to the stickers, even like the UPC barcodes, made in the US. but like those UPC barcodes are printed on a Chinese printer, right? You know,
right.
And then like,
you probably did some of the marketing on your Chinese phone, and you know,
and then like I was thinking about like micarta, and I was like, okay, let's say this micarta was made in the US. What about the fibers? What about the epoxy? Right? Like I think if you start going down, like you take the veneer of the marketing veneer of like made in the USA, take that off. And then you start digging into it, and I'm like, whoa, like this is pretty deep. And so I've been trying to like reconcile that. I shot a lot of footage while I was in China, and I'm working on a story, a long-term story about somebody asked me a question: is buying knives from China, Chinese-made knives, really that bad? And I've grappled with that myself. Like, what does that mean politically? What does that mean as an American? How does all that work? So it's been a fascinating journey. I'm not ready to like release anything publicly, what I've been working on, but it's deep, man.
And I'm excited to see what you come up with there. So what I was going to bring up is it's okay. So my first knife, which doesn't happen to be sitting here. Nope, I don't know where it is. But anyway, I'm not going to look for it. But my first knife that didn't even go into production, the Mach 51, I spent months trying to find a U.S. manufacturer for the thing. I wanted my first knife to be done in the U.S. And it's just okay. So let me give you my perfect example. Okay, so my first actual production knife, and I do think I know where one of those is, was, well, maybe I don't. All right. Anyway, I give up on looking for stuff right now. So was the Pinion, and the Pinion was my first knife, and that was produced by Kubi. And when I first started with Kubi, it took a while. There were a few issues here and there. And then at the same time, Devo started with Kubi, and they started doing some stuff. Well, Kubi's reaction to us starting to do a bunch of OEM work for them was they hired more people. They bought more machines. They bought more machines that could do more stuff. And now Kubi just launched a second brand called KB Knives, which is higher end knives. And they're doing stuff that very few people in America have or can do. Like if you look, for example, at this one was done by Concept, but like my pivots for my knives, I was told by like 4 or 5 U.S. manufacturers that to do the tooling for that wheel on their lathes, they would have to they would have to get new CNC parts and maybe even a different, and they literally sent me a quote that included me tooling their CNC, their lathes and their routers up to the point that they could do what I wanted done. And I mean, this is my first knife, Ben. There's zero chance that I was going to be able to do that, and it's like, but I had 3 different US companies tell me that exact thing, so they send me, here's how much it's going to cost per knife, but we need $10,000 or whatever up front for tooling. And literally Kubi has gone out and they have bought all kinds of high-end fancy machines. They just put this guy out with Jay Kobach. This is the KB Sumo, which is
cool.
A knife that, and they're just doing some really high-end cool stuff. So my point, I guess, I was actually going to bring up something. You said we're not going to throw anybody under the bus, so I'm going to be real careful here. There is a U.S. knife company, and no, it's not the one everybody in my chat is thinking I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Mr. Greg, okay? So that's not who I'm talking about. So please don't go pick on Greg right now. We're not doing that. I've done that, by the way, Ben. But this is another U.S. knife company. They're fairly new. They just make fixed blades. There's your hints, okay? But I've heard the owner of this company come out, and he says these are U.S. jobs. We're building this factory, and we're doing this for U.S. jobs and U.S. people, and that's fine. I love when he says stuff like that. But then I hear him say stuff like, shame on these companies that are having stuff in the knife industry made in China. And that's where I feel like what you said is an important part of this is, I don't think it's ever going to be, if I produce this same knife in America, which by the way, I still haven't been able to find an OEM, and Lefty's been trying for Devo knives. But if I found this is a $140 knife right here, that's what they're selling for. And if I did this in the US, this would probably be a $300 knife. It's just the way it is. So I personally, I don't have the ability to go build a factory out back in back of my house right now, and I don't have all that. So I think I am way on board as the Knives Fast thing to support his U.S. business and to pay the prices he's asking for, and to check out his knives. But I think it's interesting that the other way around, they don't want any part of us that are so I guess that was my thought for you is I don't know why it has to be this way or nothing. I think there's room in the market for his USA made knives and your and my China made knives to coexist. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? That was just kind of a thought, not a question.
No, it's a good thought. And, I think we put out a video, I don't know, 3-4 months ago now. The video title is Ben a Chinese sleeper agent? And
I saw that one. Two of my favorites you've done are that one and the one about USA designers not liking YouTuber personalities. Making knives. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
But somebody in the comments of that video said something, and they took it from somewhere else. But the comment was, if goods don't cross borders, then armies will. And I looked that up, and I guess it's somebody famous. So I don't know, some philosopher said that. But I actually kind of like that concept, right? Because if you can navigate the differences between a country enough to do business, right? And let those goods flow between countries, I think that the world is better that way. I've got a 3D printer from the Czech Republic, a Prusa printer, right? Like, I drive a Toyota that's a Japanese company, right? And you think about how many Toyotas are on the road. If we had said after World War II, like, Japan is our enemy, we will not help you rebuild, Toyota wouldn't exist, right? Like, so I think that as humans, if we can find ways to reconcile and live with the things that are different. Now, there's limits there, right? Like, I'll be the first
resident fact checker has you.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Whoever this Tim. Frederick Bastiet said that. Apparently,
Tim, remarkable. Thank you. Somebody's got to fact check this stuff, right? Like, I am vehemently opposed to what the Chinese government is doing in Western China with the Uyghurs, right? I'm not in favor of that.
Right.
But southeastern China is where we make our knives, right? It's happening in Guangdong province where our knives are made. Totally, it would almost be like something's happening in San Diego, and in Portland, Maine, you shouldn't buy the products because of what's happening in San Diego. Right. Now, there's a government component to that. But I guess what I've learned in my travels and what I'm studying is government lives up here. It makes the laws. It creates what trickles down. But government is up here and the people are down here, right? There are things in my government that I'm not stoked about. There are things that are happening 100%. Up here in the US that I'm like, that's not for me, but I live here and this is my life. And I think the same thing is happening in China. I've done a little research on the Communist Party in China. 7% of China is members of the Communist Party. 7%. Like, that's hardly anything.
Yeah, that is.
But they are the ruling party in China. And so I guess that's what I'm learning about here is like, wow, this is kind of mind-blowing and mind-boggling. And I'm finding these facts and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, so let me give you another fact.
Okay. I love it.
Tiananmen Square.
Right.
Tim, you're going to have to fact check my year, 89, 90.
Yeah, I was going to say 90, but I don't know.
I was
Tim's going to get us.
So Tiananmen Square.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that.
No.
In 90, I was finishing my senior year of college, so thank you.
See? Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Happy to help. But millions of people, I think something like 1.2 million people were in the streets. The estimate was in the millions of people when the Tiananmen Square massacre happened. Well, okay, let's say some of those people fall off. and they're dead. You know, they've aged out. But there are still maybe 1 million people who were marching in the street in Tiananmen Square that live in China. And granted, they've been silenced and they can't talk about how they feel.
Oh, you were so close, Ben.
Oh, I think I said 89 originally. 89.
You did. You said 80 something, 89, and then there you
go. Anyway, I've thought a lot about that as I've been learning, like what you read in the news and what is happening on the ground with individual people is not necessarily the same. Like you could read all the news from the US and be like, wow, that place is terrible, you know? But like my end of
different all across the map, right?
So anyway, I don't know if that's.
I know. I didn't want us to derail the whole thing with it, but I think it's interesting that on both, you know, on I think there's just some sides to it. You know, I would eventually love to make some USA made knives. And by the way, if you start manufacturing, I'll call you. Thank you. But no, I will. And I've said the same thing. Andy Armstrong keeps saying Rosecraft wants to start a plant, and I'm like, absolutely, please do it. If people do it that are actually, you know, not opposed to everything that's going on, and we can end up getting to some point where we can make knives in America for not $1 billion a knife, then you know, I'll be on board with it 100%. The idea though of me as this very small change knife guy, you know, producing a knife that's going to cost $300 that they can buy in China, you know, from China for 100, 120, 130 is absurd. I'm not going to put myself in that situation.
Okay, I gotta like comment on one more thing there.
I want to hear it. Yep.
I think part of the reason the Made in USA drum beating is happening so deep right now is that is the only unique selling proposition for knives made in the US, because frankly, many of the knives coming from overseas, from China, even Taiwan, are better price, sometimes better materials, better value. Let's say better value than what you can buy in the US. So what can you focus on? Well, I can focus on the Made in USA aspect. And I think that's fair. I don't think that's a bad way to do it. Like, what else are you going to stand on? Because your Benchmade is going to be more expensive than an equivalent knife coming out of China. So 100%. What can you stand on? You can say, well, your countrymen made it. And I think there's something to that. And I don't discount that. But I think when the chest beating gets vicious is when I don't like it.
Right. So. Me too. Yeah. Well, and I did mention a name a little bit ago, and there's definitely been some of that, you know, where it got really bad at a blade show a couple years ago. So it's, you know, it is what it is. You know, the thing is, everybody's got an opinion. We have the right to speak freely. But there's always consequences to that too.
Ooh, that's a fun one. Pull that one up on screen. Infinite Owls. I wonder if an MKM style consortium would work here.
Oh, there he is. Yes.
I think that's fascinating. Right?
That would be fascinating if that could happen.
Because part of the advantage that like Yangzheng China or like Maniago Italy has is they have these concentrations of knife makers. Even I would say the Boise Valley up in Idaho. Like when you can start getting groups of knife makers together. So there's an interesting podcast out there right now from TJ Swartz. He's talking about reeve cup grinding, where you're using a cup wheel grinder on your CNC to grind the bevels, because that's one of the biggest holdups in knife manufacturing is bevel grinding, because you have to have a $750,000 burger grinder from Germany that's a finicky machine to be able to grind your bevels. And so up in the Boise Valley, Reeve Knives has been doing this cup wheel grinding for a long time, Chris Reeve Knives. And they have shared it with all these people in the Boise Valley. So Grant and Gavin Hawk are doing it. TJ Swartz, the guys. So
there is some of this already going on then.
There's some of this going on. And what I'm seeing is that's starting to spread down into the Utah scene with Axial Knives. We're talking to Colby at Axial. And so I think that's kind of starting to happen a little bit, even with like events like Makers Syndicate, where all of these companies are coming together and talking about how they're making knives in the US, because we don't have the luxury, and I don't understand why we don't have the luxury of 20 or a line of 20 or 30 EDM wire EDM machines. We don't have the luxury of like these inexpensive grinders. And so we're starting to figure, okay, if we're going to make knives in the US, we have to be more open about what we share and how we collaborate and how we make things work. And I appreciate TJ Sports. I appreciate Tim Reeve for kind of being like, hey, knives in the US are cool. We can do this, but we have to be more open and we have to be willing to share. You look at a company like, let's say a Portland company that has a butterfly for a logo. They don't share. And
I might pick on that company from time to time. So you're in the right place. Anyway, go ahead.
They don't share. Like they are proprietary, and I respect that. That is how business in America usually works. But I also appreciate the fact that we're entering this era where small makers are starting to share the things that they know, because I agree. It's opening opportunities for people like me to call and be like, how do you do this? What machine do I buy? Where do I heat treat? How do I laser cut? Like I'm learning these things because people are willing to share. And that to me is really exciting. It feels like a watershed moment in the US knife manufacturing scene.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting. And I think Charlie brings up a really important point here. And I think this is the case with Jack Wolf knives too. People, or with anything, like if you go to the Kaiser Facebook group, the people that buy Kaiser knives are just very much looking to be a part of that Kaiser community. Knafs, same thing. Yep. I think it's really cool to see people wanting to get in. I mean, I have a very small company in Tempest Knives. I see people doing that with my knives. It's been really cool, Ben. Recently I asked if people would post like their Tempest collections, because I feel like I have enough models now where it's like, and looking at all these people that have bought multiples of my knives and, of different models and everything, it's crazy to me. It just blows my mind. So it is very much all part of being part of a community. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And it feels like the community is growing in really good ways. Yeah. I don't think it's growing. Like I've been in this 13 years and I've sort of seen the Instagram era, like the forum. I got on just as forums were like at their peak, and then Instagram hit. And I've kind of watched the industry grow, and I think it has grown pretty well. But I actually worry quite a bit that the new generation, like what are they calling them? The Gen Alphas,
I don't know. I can't keep up with it.
Folks between the ages of 12 and 20 right now, 12 and 18 maybe, they're all on TikTok. We can't have knives on TikTok. So where are they going to discover this community and discover tools and not just like be consumers, but be creators? And I don't know. I don't have an answer to that, but it feels like we're growing maybe a little slower, but a little bit more organically and more, I would say people entering the knife hobby right now are more knowledgeable and excited than previous generations of people entering the hobby. Like, because they didn't just, it's a little harder than just like finding somebody on Instagram now. You actually like have to research on their website, and you have to like kind of go to a show and get into it, or have somebody introduce you to knives at work. And so it's sort of this different moment. And I think that's fun. So
there you go. Tim's got you guys a link. Definitely go join. All right. I want to do something. We got like 15 minutes left. You guys, I've done all the talking. What are your questions for Ben? We got to leave a little time for that. So let me know. I can't hit all of them because I know what's going to happen. There's going to be 32 questions at once, but I'll try to hit as many as I can before we wrap this up. My mom wore combat boots. Nice, Bando. Cool. The lander is evergreen. That's a fact. Nice.
Kind.
Yeah. It's now, Ben, you and I've talked about this. I got this one from Urban EDC, and it actually came with the Sagaiha scales, but those were flat. And I love these contoured. Good. I'm one of the few people probably that changed it out because everybody liked those Sagaiha ones. But it was like, yeah, Jay, he doesn't know what a Tempest downdraft is. Nobody does yet because it hasn't come out yet. This guy, so I got to show you this one.
I love it.
I do know where this is. This is a model that I had prototyped a while back, but I haven't produced it yet. It's probably going to come out in like January or February, probably February or March, actually, if I have to be real.
It's clean. Was that a flipper or how did you open it? I missed it.
Yeah. So a lot of my knives use this. It's a very low profile inline flipper, if you will. And so I use holes, but I learned a lot of people when I first did my first few knives, a lot of people were like, oh, I just can't buy your knife because the only way to open it is a hole. So obviously for a lot of us, middle finger flicking is just second nature, but I don't like a pokey flipper. So
Agreed.
Yeah, it's just a little small. It's got like clean. 3 jimps total. Well, 2 actually. And you just flick it backwards. It's definitely not a push button. It's an absolute grab the corner, light switch it kind of things. It's just my preference. And so yeah, Jay has wanted this knife since I first showed it several months ago, and I decided to do the microjet first, which is, by the way, Ben, I should just send you one of these, but this is your size.
On the show. I'll carry it.
This is your size, man. Oh, it's actually, I guess it's a little bit bigger. Let's do it this way, Casey. It's a little bit bigger. It's a 7-inch knife.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-inch blade instead of 2.9, whatever. But definitely think you would enjoy it. But it's very simple, very much. But again, it has this little inline flipper. But I decided to do these first. And the people that really want this Wharncliffe blade have let me hear about it. They've been like, hurry up. We want, and I really like this one because it's super thin for me and lightweight. And so I think it's going to be a good one. We'll see. But that's the thing about showing type.
I love it. Now you get to answer questions about when is this coming out for the next 3 months via email.
Yes, yes, absolutely. A Lander Wharncliffe. Interesting.
We're playing with blade shapes all the time. It's fun. I've really enjoyed. Okay, what can we pack into the same existing handle?
Right.
We haven't played with the Wharncliffe yet, but there might be a Tonto on the horizon. So.
And I got to tell you, I liked, you showed me at Blade Show this past year, you showed me the Sendy, and I wasn't sure. I mean, I had it in hand for like 10 seconds. So I wasn't sure, but I had that in for review, and I love that blade shape.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. It is quite the cutter. It's thin and slicey. Ben and Zach need to make a knife together. Interesting. Any talks of that?
No talks of that. It's interesting because Zach's yonder. I feel like I had to wrestle him and headlock him to get him to make it. In fact, if you look at his original drawings, you'll see my handwriting all over it. So I think we checked that box.
Yeah, you probably already did it together. That's it. Okay, since so many OEMs work in the same city over there, significant differences working with the different OEMs since between two you. Okay, yeah. So go ahead, Ben. Let's hear your take on this. I've kind of shared some of my thoughts on this. It is different.
I mean, it's every company operates differently. We're working with a company right now that, man, their drawings are like a 7-page book, and it comes with renderings and all sorts of stuff. And some companies are not like that. It's more like 2D napkin sketches turn into 2D drawings and 3D drawings. Some companies will send you STP files, step files that you can print, 3D print, and test it out in hands. Others won't. Some are better at communication than others. Some are better at quality control than others. So yeah, absolutely. It'd almost be like if you had 5 friends that all do construction and you asked them to build a shed for you. Those 5 sheds are going to look totally different. They're going to function all the same.
Right.
But like the way that they join things and put the shingles on, like, yeah, there's industry standards, but like everyone does it their particular way. In fact, it's funny because I can pick up knives now and I can be like 99% sure the OEM on this is we. Like somebody handed me like a James brand pen the other day, like a pen. And I was like, oh, I know who made this. And it's just like, holy smokes. Like every company has a feeling to it. So yeah,
that's
totally
awesome. Yeah. And I would add, because of his question here, I think communication is totally different. I think I would like to work with Kaiser at some point, because so many of them are really good with English.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I've worked with some Chinese companies that I work with. The communication barrier is still a big challenge. So that would be kind of my biggest thing. Somebody's asking, have you looked at pry bars, multi-tools?
Yeah, see, that's kind of fun, Tim, because we literally are just putting in a purchase order for a new pry bar that we're working on. I've had people ask this before. I've never wanted to do one.
Tim's actually been in your office staring, with his binoculars, looking at what you're working on. So
I love it. This one is not like, I think pry bars are interesting because like you can go out and buy like a $200 titanium pry bar. That's not me.
No.
This thing is more of like just an in pocket or in wallet sort of pry bar. Titanium. It'll be fun. So
that's awesome. There's our buddy Lefty. You must have heard your ears burning earlier. I was talking about you, Kev. Good to have you here, man. Yeah, you haven't been on one of my lives in a long time. There is your Daleka salute for sure. Yeah, it's the greatest thing. We just started it as a salute a long time ago, and it just stuck. So
it's amazing.
Trying to find another question here. What's Tim say here? I say we need a section of the Knafs YouTube videos called Knafs Laughs that include dad joke of the week. Make it happen. I started doing some dad jokes on my shorts, and they didn't go anywhere. So let's hear Ben do it. Maybe this will be better.
Maybe. It's funny.
Your delivery would probably be better. I'm an old guy, so.
Well, we do this show every week, the Knafs at Night on YouTube.
Yep.
And
I love
it. It's super fun. But at the same time, like just yesterday, I was talking to Ricky, who edits for Best Time ADC and edits for Knafs. And Ricky's like, we may want to like start cutting sections out. There's a lot of sections. And so, Tim, I don't know if we're going to add more sections, but I love the suggestion.
Ricky's trying to kill some. Gotta love it. Let's see. Any other questions, guys? I'm sorry. I'm sure I'm missing some.
Primer.
The primer. There you go. I like it.
That's funny because I was sitting in a meeting this week and we're like, we got to name this thing. Maybe call it Prime. Maybe not. Maybe
we need an astronaut doggy. Okay.
I saw a couple of people asking for astronaut dogs. Everything for me is about stories. The kitties had their own story. Right. I don't have a dog story yet, so I don't know.
Oh man. That's funny. All right. So I don't even know how old your oldest kids are, but what do your kids think of what you do, man? I got mixed things because my oldest is almost 30, my youngest is 20, and I got two others in the middle. And there's like different levels of, oh, that's cool. Dad's got some really cool stuff. Hey, Dad, can I have one of your knives? And then you got the oldest one who got my first knife and doesn't really care if he ever gets another one, And so, how about you?
It varies. I think all my kids think it's kind of cool. And obviously I've worked in knives their entire lives. And
that's so true.
It's almost like fish in water, right? Like the fish doesn't know it's in water. It's just like living in the water. And like, there are just knives around the house. Like there's prototypes everywhere and they know to ask before they pick them up. But like I'm watching my son get into it, which is really fun. He's 10. And he'll wear like his Monterey Bay Knives shirt to school, or like Squid Industries to school. And it's pretty dang cool to watch him kind of like starting to attach to it. The other day, he's got a baby banter, and the other day he's like, Dad, I need a better knife. I'm like, well, why, dude? And he's like, well, this one's cool and all, but like I want like a bougie banter too, and I want this one and that one. I'm like, okay, cool. This seems to be taking. Not on purpose.
That's good. That's awesome. The one of mine that's the most into it is actually my daughter. So, but she's definitely into design, the design brain side of things. So
this is pretty funny. Splitting slices. Casey, your oldest is just thinking about wasting his inheritance. If you don't like knives, we cut you out of the inheritance, right? Like that's all.
That's it. Yep. I'm definitely not making a lot of money at this. So yes, he's definitely got something there. But I've always told him they could probably sell my knife collection and get a few bucks out of that. So
are you having fun though, Casey? Maybe that's my question for you.
I am.
Good.
I am, but some days I'm not. If I'm being honest. So it's the YouTube channel, the knife, the Tempest side of things. I think I'm having a blast. I'm not getting overly stressed about it. I'm not. I'm trying to go slow. So I think my wife wishes I would make more models more quickly, but having basically 2 full-time jobs and then a YouTube channel and then a knife company, I'm gonna take it at a very slow pace, and I think that's why I'm having fun. I think the YouTube channel sometimes stresses me out. The daily drops of a new video and getting all the I've got literally 8 new knives came in this week, and I look at those as, yes, I get to have fun with them, but I always also look at them as, holy cow, I got to get all these recorded. I get it, So I think one of the things I'm actually looking at is like scaling that back. I'm actually thinking I may go down to like less videos a week and maybe try to combine some knives together and things like that. I'm at 25,000 subs. I'm happy with that. It's like. So I'm actually playing with the idea of doing more like pairings, like taking some of these and pairing 2 or 3 of them together. And if it only ends up being 2 or 3 videos a week, that may be. So yes, I'm having fun, but I'm needing to make adjustments, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Somebody has mentioned Aries EDC several times. So I'm writing that down because I'm gonna come back to that.
Here, I will show you. I have one of his knives. He's a custom maker out of Florida.
Cool.
And this is, you would actually, I don't know, I don't want to speak for you, but size wise, all of his stuff is pretty dang small. I mean, This is what's called the rock hopper. Nice. And this is a custom. So I picked out what scales I wanted and the acid stonewash, and he does customs, but he's also starting to do small production runs. Well, I call it production, but he's basically taking one of his models and doing 5 or 6 of them in a month and then dropping them on his Etsy page. So, and then 1 month he'll do customs again, so I think he is doing some pretty cool stuff from his garage in Florida. Cool. So, really, really cool stuff. Nice guy too.
That's cool.
What I actually think you might like is, his channel is a lot of his production. So he does live streams with him, making scales and putting the bevels in and grinding the bevels, and so he's doing content based on what he's doing. So Scott's a pretty cool dude for sure.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I saw people saying that too. I didn't know if you knew who he was or not.
No, that's fantastic.
Bicycle riding dogs are the inverse to space kitties. Okay,
I could maybe get behind that.
There you go. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up in a minute. And I cannot state, I see, this is, you asked me what I wanted to talk about. And what I wanted to do is exactly what we ended up doing, was just chatting. Cool. Because every time I've been to Blade Show and gotten to talk to you, or even just a little email conversations, I feel like you got a lot to say. You look at the industry from a slightly different perspective than I do. And I think we solidified that with your comments about, I'm not really a knife guy like some of you are. I'm more of I like knives, but I'm not like, I got to get the next one. I got to get the next one. I got to get the next one, like some of us are. So I think it's kind of cool to hear your perspective and the fact that you're traveling and learning all these things. I think is a dream. I mean, I think that's really, really cool. Yeah.
Thank you. No, it feels like this moment of, for me, growing clarity and like, holy smokes, complexity, right? And Casey, I got to apologize to you because, you asked me, like, I think you've asked me like 3 years, and something about the timing has always been.
Monday nights are bad for a guy with a bunch of kids. I get it, man. It's not.
So I'm grateful that you were patient. Yeah.
You are not the only one. The guys from Finch, I just had Spencer from Finch on, And it was the same thing. He's like, my daughter has this on Monday night. My son has this on Monday night. And finally, he got a free Monday night. He actually told me after the fact, he told his wife, Casey's been such a big supporter. I'm taking this Monday night and I'm coming on his show, period, end of story. And
no, I'm glad you hit me up this week, and I'm glad we could make it work, because this has been on my list of things to sort out. I hope it was
worthwhile for your hour.
Oh, 100%. I think the thing that people don't understand, you were talking about YouTube and all of this scheduling, and this just there's so much that happens just for you and me to sit down on this. I mean, you're paying for StreamYard. You're like, the world is complex. So the fact that it works sometimes, to me, is like, let's go. That's amazing. So thank you for having me on, Casey.
Well, this is really the reason you were here, is to balance out my shiny head. So thank you, Politipote. See, my audience, Ben, I don't know if you get these jabs. I'm sure you do. You want to talk about staying humble? My folks make sure I stay humble. There is they're the best.
They don't let you float away. They'll keep you down to earth, won't they?
No, they don't. So it is hilarious. And, it's always interesting, because it's like you were saying, everybody likes something different. There's Tim, who loves small knives. There's a guy named Kurt that's in here all the time. Kurt actually has, and I don't know where he said he got it, but it's a stiletto that is a 9-inch stiletto. This guy only likes big knives. He loves the big cold steel stuff, the Espada XL and all that. And that, so you just got all, and so every time I make a knife, Kurt's always like, make an XL version of it. I'm like, it's already inches. What do you want? And so it's and everybody wants you to keep the stash rocking there. So there you go.
I'll keep the stash. My daughter loves the stash, so it will stay for a little bit.
Keep it until it turns lovely gray.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. So again, Casey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it very much. We'll let you go. And guys, definitely check out, Tim put a bunch of links. Check out Knafs on YouTube. Check out Knafs.com. I was going to actually put up the website here, but I never got to it. But definitely check out what Ben's doing. And, of course, all his knives with Wee and Civivi and whoever else.
Awesome.
So thank you, Ben, and have a great rest of your day. And thank you guys for watching the Knives Fast channel. See ya.
Thanks, Casey. See ya.
Bye-bye.